Welcome to Your Vote, Your Voice, Eindhoven Chooses, a Radio for Brainport election series where we talk about civic participation, democracy, and shared responsibility in our city and region. In this series, we not only look at how local democracy works, but also how participation matters, especially in the diverse and international region like Brainport. I am Supriya Vij, and I am at the Technical University with two Jean-Pauls today. One is my co-host, Jean-Paul Linnartz, and on my left is our guest for today, Jean-Paul 𝐘𝐨𝐿, who wants to redesign how society works. Welcome to the show, Jean-Paul.
Thank you.
So you're most welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Jean-Paul, 30 years ago, you stepped away from the financial career. What was the reason behind it? What made you get started with the new thing in your life?
That's an interesting question. Yes, 30 years ago, I was in a crossroad of my life. I was an international executive at that time in a large multinational. And they were going to send me to the Far East, but I was going through a divorce with my first wife. She didn't want she didn't want that international career. But we had a child together. And I had to ask myself, what am I? Am I this international person who sends money from anywhere in the world to a child and postcards? Or am I this father, primarily father, and taking care of his professional life around fatherhood? I decided for fatherhood. And to my surprise, the whole world around me said, what are you doing? You know, you're letting power go and money and not just for a child. And that broke into my consciousness, like, where do we lay our priorities as humankind as a whole? You know, do we talk about only short-term financial objectives, or are we looking really at our sustainable existence and through our children, for instance, and the core values of our human beings?
So you, at this moment, are really engaged in sustainability. You even talk about sustainocracies, a kind of organization of a country towards sustainability. But you come from a financial background. Does that fit?
I come from a business background. That's right. I was educated as a mathematician and international business studies. So and ICT also. So I did my master's also in business technology. So I come from that background, but now the last 30 years I publish in anthropology and in sociology because I went through the idea of sustainability from a human perspective, not only the earth and the resources and all the external things, but what does sustainability mean from a existential point of view at a human level. And that was a choice of my fatherhood, for instance, which was the start of that way of thinking.
And that is a break from the past, or are you trying to see whether we can have an economically viable approach to sustainability? Because that brings the two together.
Yes, if it's all context. If you put money first, then you leave ethics aside because you make your choices based on money. But if you make your choices based on, for instance, developing a healthy city with a healthy community, then the economics becomes part of that as a result, and it becomes a healthy economics too. The thing is, for instance, if we only put money up front, then we pollute, for instance, our environment. If we pollute our environment, we pollute ourselves. We get high cost of healthcare and that kind of things. That is all in degenerative towards our economics. It may sound as a growth economic, but it's not. It's really putting the things into... So I'm trying to put the things into perspective, to balancing out what economics really is.
But how do you convince a CEO that health is more important than the KPIs and the profit margins?
Well, first of all, from a sustainability point of view, health is key. It's the basics of everything. If you look at nature, everything is always healthy because what is not healthy is being replaced by more healthy choice or replacement. So whatever is sick in nature is being replaced.
Then you try to touch the human feeling of the CEO, but not as bonus at the end of the year.
Correct. So I understand that health is currency, but have you seen those mind shifts happening? with
Yes,
this?
when I started with this 30 years ago, I was the crazy guy on street corner shouting, the health is important and safety is important. Everybody was going like, what? We solve everything with money. But then the credit crisis came in 2008. Before that, I was doing the defining entrepreneurship of the 21st century, which is values driven. It's not only money driven. Because if you're only money driven and you pollute everything, you leave the losses to our society. So I call that one times profit for one particular segment of society, and then the losses for the human being, nature, and that. So I defined the entrepreneurship of the 21st century, which is 4 times win, which is good for the human being, good for society, good for the environment, and good for the economy. But not placing economy up front. It is a result of the first 3. And so when I started doing this, there were all kind of entrepreneurs at CEO level that wanted to work with me as a consultant to get their organizations into a 4 times win situation. But then I looked at society and said a good 4 times win enterprise can only function well in an environment which is also 4 times win, which means that it also has to be government lined up with 4 times win, and us as citizens also 4 times win. We also have to think about the values in our behavior. If we only consume without thinking about the effects of our consumption, then we are helping the degenerative world. So we can really, in fact, the 4 times win connected with just about everything. And then I started looking at society, inviting all these pillars of society to come together, like government, business, citizens, and science, to say, okay, if we work from this perspective, how do we deal, for instance, with a healthy city or healthy region development? And then everybody started becoming enthusiastic about that. And then you get applied innovation, you get applied behavior, you get applied politics, and everybody started to change mentality.
So is it replacing the democracy, or is it helping to strengthen it?
It's helping to strengthen, but first of all, we have to understand what democracy is. And democracy, the way we are doing it right now in the Netherlands, democracy is passing on responsibility to our government, and then we sit back and leave them do the things. Every 4 years we go to vote, and we say, okay, we vote for the nicest looking person, or for the person with the best story, or whatever, and then we leave it, because then we hope that they take that responsibility.
Yeah, and in between, for 4 years, we just complain.
And then we complain. Yeah, we pinpoint at the government, they're doing everything bad, whatever, they don't comply with their promises and everything, simply because we don't understand how that world works. The real democracy is that we also take responsibility ourselves. That we look at, because democracy really means the voice of the people.
Almost in the ancient Greek way.
You
go to the square, to the market, and then...
Yes.
Yeah.
So then if we take that democracy at my side, then we have a real-time democracy. Then we sit together and say, okay, the objective is not a growth economy, which is abstract, because a growth economy, okay, more money and whatever, but that consequence of one. Now we look at a healthy city, which is concrete. Okay, let's fill that in. Fill that in with concrete type of activities like greening the city, different mobility, not polluting mobility, other behavior, more social connection, those kind of things. How do you to fill that in? And that is a democracy where we have to make the choices ourselves. We can't leave it to somebody telling us that we have to go and play music somewhere because that's socially correct or something. We don't have to need somebody to tell us that we have to leave the car at home and take the bicycle because that's more healthy. We have to do those responsibilities ourselves. And then we look at politics. And then we say, okay, how can politics help us to take that responsibility in a different way? And that is what I'm all about. That's why I bring the politicians together and connect with the people to develop this together also, because politics in reality is only the defense of different interests. And but I'm connecting those different interests at a level of responsibility, shared responsibility, not a responsibility for money, but for our existential values. And that is really what the discussion is all about in the whole world. Because if we look at the way we have destroyed everything in the world and the warfare that is going on right now and all the conflicts in the world, which is all material conflict, then we really have to turn these things around. And how would it be healthy if we look at it in a peaceful manner, in a diplomatic manner, in a values-driven manner? And that is what I've been trying to do here in Eindhoven. I'm trying to do it worldwide.
If I hear you talk, it sounds like you should be the politician, but you do not the opposite, but you try to engage people. And that may start with knowing for which party to vote, just understanding the politics, starting the connection. Is that why you have been so engaged, so active in trying to get people to vote?
If we look at Eindhoven as it stands today, 40% or more of our society are people from a foreign origin. They come from outside, they come here, and they form part of our community. That 40% has as much a voice as the other 60%, which are the original Dutch, which are here. Why do the original Dutch have to determine the future of the city through their voting? I want those, if those 40% of foreign origin connect into one single political party, they will change the face of this city. So we do have a chance and a responsibility to actually act. And I would like the foreign people have made a very, very important choice in their life. They left their home country, their home culture, to come to this place here to make something of their life. Then they cannot be just dependent on what politicians are going to do with the city, because it affects their life. If you engage with that, then you take shared responsibility. And that is my positive invitation to the people, to actually stand up and do something with the right of voting.
But do you think internationals are interested, or do you feel they are distant?
Well, what I'm trying to show them that if they're not interested, that they are leaving the choices to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it is important that they become interested. They become interested in influencing, and influencing from their perspective. And their perspective, that I try to make that perspective also a health perspective, a safety perspective, a core values perspective. But that's up to them to understand these kind of things. But the very first step is, where do you, as a person who came here to make the best of their life, influence their own surroundings to help them make the best of their life?
And then, of course, the question is what to vote for. So to understand what the different parties want to do, and is that a matter of reading the promises, or is that a matter of meeting people, going to debates?
The first thing you have to understand, that in the Netherlands we have, when the industrial era, when this whole voting type of thing started appearing, there were only two real parties to vote for. There was the right-wing party, those were the entrepreneurs, those were the business people, and then there were the left-wing parties, those were the people, the Labour Party, the people, the working class, who were defending the rights of the working class. But ever since that, people were getting more and more interested in politics, there was a diversification of political parties. There are now political parties for the elderly. There are political parties who don't want internationals. There are political parties defending the right for the animals. There are political parties, there are just about 30 different political parties. Just imagine one thing, 30 political parties, and we have 250,000 people here, of which a percentage have voting rights. The younger people don't have that right yet, but all the people who can vote, that is spread among those 30. Those 30 have to try to find a coalition. Those who win there's not one party who is going to be winning. There are going to be 6 or 7 or 8 parties who will have to join to get to some kind of majority. So they will have to negotiate their way to get into a coalition. And what I have added to this city is that with that simple word of health, that if all those political parties connect with that word of health, whether it's from an animal point of view or elderly point of view or foreigners point of view or whatever point of view, if they connect with that health, they have a basis of coalition. But you have to imagine that in this world, the political parties are going to go through a hell of a time to get into a proper coalition to make it workable for the city. So your choices, you can read about it, but you can also join some of the encounters that we organize, so that you can meet these people and you can talk with them from your perspective, and then you get involved, and that it becomes interesting, because then you can connect not only the people and their promises, because those promises are going to be diluted in the coalition discussions, but you get also what do we want to be as a city and a region.
So I more or less hear you say it is important to meet the politicians in person, to know about them. Because, let's say, democracies are vulnerable. They can easily be influenced by fake news, by external parties who want to push democracy in a certain direction, or people with a very popular presentation of what they do. And in the end, that can end up in a different way. So meeting people in person is the way to go, and then hope that that is also a person who can cooperate with the rest to...
There are two sides to the medal. First of all, the person himself, you yourself as an international, connect, make up your own mind, and also what you want in life, and how does that correspond to the way we develop our city and our region, and then you can make your choices among the political parties, but you can also make your choices about where you want to work and how do you want to work and those kind of things, how you behave. The other thing is, the other side of the medal is the political parties themselves. They are very interested in connecting with this 40%. And they want to know how this 40% is reasoning. Because obviously this is different than the Dutch people. These people come from abroad, they have a different perspective, have a broader mind view. They might have things to say that the political parties have not been taking into account now yet. And that influencing...
But if you look at the statistics, I think 50 to 55% of the Dutch people have voted, the local residents. But if we see at the other side, for the internationals, it's less than 10 to 15%. So if the participation is so low, so that also, I mean, it has to come from both ways. So
I think it's because there's not been a radio or podcast program like this to invite the people. I think the people come here, and many people who come from other countries probably have never, ever had the opportunity to even consider voting or to be part of the democracy. They don't know.
Yes.
And then you suddenly get a letter in your post box from a government. Well, that is a letter which could be interpreted from different ways. Because if you come from a country like what I would say Iraq, Iran, or whatever, or African countries, a letter from government could be a threat. And so getting people
more or
to
less
feel confident.
Like today is your obligation to vote for the key person who is already in office.
That's right, yeah, something like that. So really getting confident with the fact that you have the freedom here in this country to be part of this whole thing, that you don't have to be afraid that if you open your mouth and you are present in these type of presentations that you're going to be judged by somebody or something. No, just feel free. And I think we have to open our hands and our arms to the people and actually give them that trust.
So it's a matter of trust. It may also be a matter of, does it matter if I vote because I'm just one of the 250 inhabitants of Eindhoven? So
and also probably the knowledge, because I've met so many people here and then they're living here for 12 years. They didn't know that if they are not Dutch citizens, they cannot vote. So if you're a non-EU citizen and if you've been living here continuously legally for 5 years, you are allowed to vote. And that is one information which so many people did not have. And that's why we started with this election series as well, so that maximum people should know and understand the political structure.
Yes. Supriya, you're an international as well. Is it fair to say after 5 years, we may also expect that you know something about how things work in the city and what you feel is important here, what should we grow, what we should pay attention for? So it's pretty natural that after 5 years you start to think, could we change things for the better?
Well, I've been actively involved in many things in Eindhoven, whether it is education, whether it is community work, whether it is connecting cultures, going through neighborhood, each and every neighborhood. So I've been part of it, and I have realized that if you start contributing, you can call any place, any country your home. But the thing is that you have to give it back, because my initial years were, I was struggling with doubts and everything. But once I changed this mindset that, when I started contributing back, I felt like I belong to this place, and that's very important. And in my network, I think everybody's very active and they really want to vote. And then the day we have to go for the elections is there and the voting date is there, everybody starts WhatsApping to each other that today we have to go, don't forget. And also, I think we're quite open in that matter, yes.
So you feel more engaged once you vote. If I listen to Jean-Paul Linnartz, I also get the impression just casting your vote and then thinking it's done, now I lean back and I see that they deliver on promises. That is also not what democracy is about. So it is also happening after the vote, not only for those who are elected to be in the
But if you're not part of it, then you can't complain as well. So if you have to be actively involved,
that's right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Yeah. As you said, people complain because the government is not doing what they want. But where is your involvement, man? Okay, I go to work, I do my things, I pay taxes. That's not enough involvement.
Absolutely.
Jean-Paul Close, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Supriya, thank you very much for also
Thank you for
giving
joining.
the view on from an international on how to vote. Jean-Paul, I hope that people indeed follow your advice and figure out what to vote for, and then to vote in that sequence, preferably.
Yeah, well,